And welcome to Around the Ozarks Spotlight. Each week we uncover the stories behind the people who live and work here in Southwest Missouri. Those individuals with entrepreneurial spirit who work to better the lives of others, even put pen to paper to write books about the stories and history of the Ozarks and its people. I'm your host, Scott Meier. Today we are going to explore the world of local live theater with the director of the newest production, which is Elf. It's at Springfield's Little Theater. Hello, Josh Inmon.
Hi, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Josh, I hear from our discussion prior to the to today's program that I've had you in studio before. Obviously, we were talking about pre and post pandemic, so we are in our digital studio now, and
Yes,
only because it makes life a lot easier for both of us.
it's one of the bonuses of the pandemic, right? A silver lining that we have all these new tools now, so it makes
Boy,
things
there
easier.
aren't there aren't a lot of them, are there, Josh?
Right, that's true.
All right. So, many of us, certainly someone like myself that's been around the planet for a while, are familiar with the story of Buddy and the whole show of Elf as it
Mhm.
was in cinemas. And I'm guessing live theater is going to take a little different look at it.
It does a little bit. It's the story that we all know and love, of course, about Buddy the elf who crawls into Santa's bag as an infant and ends up at the North Pole and is raised by elves and Santa and doesn't realize that he's human. So it's the same story that the movie has, but it's just so much more fun. I think there's nothing like live theater, like being in the room where that art is happening and being created right in front of you. So of
Uh-huh.
course, it's all of that, but it's also a musical. So it's full of song and dance, and it's the perfect holiday show. It really is.
Josh, let's take a step back if we can. Whenever I have the directors on the program, I love to find out why they do what they do and where they come from. And why don't you tell the folks who's Josh Inman?
Yeah. So born and raised here in Springfield. And ever since I was a kid, I found theater when I was in elementary school. I loved everything about it. So
Mm-hmm.
I got involved with Springfield Little Theatre actually when I was in high school about 20 years ago. I joined Yes Troop, which is their kind of youth performance troupe, and really never left. I always say I grew up there doing stuff at
Uh,
Springfield Little Theatre and performed quite a bit when I was in high school and college, and then kind of had the natural progression into teaching, starting some classes, some dance and acting classes when I
mm-hmm.
was in college, and then just kind of kept with it and started directing and choreographing and like I said, I've never left. I love it. I love it there.
Josh, what do you think that is? Because myself, same thing. I got involved in theater in high school, did a few productions in college. It's not for everybody, and but I love the challenge of it, and I guess it's that whole thing about going out on the stage, and you've got to bring your A game.
You do. I think the best thing about theater is it brings out this creative side in people that a lot of times they don't even know they've had. So especially when you're doing something at Springfield Little Theater, um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a community theater, and community comes before the word theater. So it's community first, and then we
Sure.
do theater kind of as a result of that community bond that we build. So my one of my favorite parts of the whole process is just being in that rehearsal room and looking at these relationships that are being formed. And especially we have some adults who maybe did theater in high school or years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and here they are again. Maybe they haven't been on stage in 20 plus years, but you kind of see that inner child come back out of them, and it's so fun. The community is the best aspect of it for me.
My guest today that you're hearing and viewing, hopefully, is Josh Inman. Josh, the director of this year's production of Elf at Springfield's Little Theater. I believe the opening night is the 17th of November.
It is Friday, November 17th.
And how are ticket sales going?
They're actually moving pretty swift. So
Yeah.
if you'd like to get your tickets, hurry up and do that. SpringfieldLittleTheater.org. But yeah, usually the holiday shows for SLT sell really well,
Yeah.
and Elf is no exception.
Now, I've got to tell you, I can't help but always throw up praise on all the directors here. But my wife and I have had a chance to live around the country and, see theater and community theater in places like Minneapolis and Detroit and even New York City. I worked in New York City for a while. And we saw not only Broadway productions, but went to a lot of off Broadway stuff because it's really where a lot of actors go to polish up on their skills. But I got to tell you, we came to Springfield about 8 years ago and got involved with everything at Landers from that time forward because of my being in media. We have an incredibly strong group of actors, singers, and dancers in Springfield, Missouri.
We do. We do. The executive director of SLT, Beth Doman, always says that Springfield is a freaky vortex of talent. That's her phrase that she's kind of coined. And for a community of our size, a relatively small community, for us to have the talent that we do, and not just the talent, but the resources, and Springfield Little Theatre, Juanita K. Hammonds Hall, we have all of these performing arts organizations that really are delivering top-notch talent and entertainment to our community.
Well, the extension, even beyond the kids that are in middle school and high school that are involved, when you go to Drury and Evangel, and also, obviously Missouri State, and I'm not sure if you reach down into the Branson area or not for some of the performers, but we're surrounded by so much talent.
Oh, we are, and it's Missouri State's musical theater department. Drury has an exceptional theater department. It's everywhere you look, which, like I said, for a community of our size is pretty rare. People are always surprised. I also work at Juanita K. Hammonds Hall, and we're always being told by these touring groups when they come to Springfield, they're so surprised at the culture in this town and the art and how much we have to offer.
Well, I think you would agree. It's difficult to get folks that have a high profile in different specific areas like medicine and law without having an arts base. And Springfield has really gone above and beyond, especially with Springfield's Little Theatre, in providing that.
Yes, they have. I always like to tell the story that when John Q. Hammonds donated the plot of land that Juanita K. Hammonds Hall sits on, he gave a speech. This is 35 plus years ago. And he said the reason that he believed in donating this and making this a reality in Springfield is because every major city in this country, when you look at thriving cities, at the center of that is always a performing arts center or an arts organization. So I think a lot of times people don't necessarily associate that with a thriving city, or that's not necessary, but the arts are crucial. I mean, we would not be where we are if we did not have this arts community.
It's easy, and it's not just the fault of a community like Springfield. So many times these things are taken for granted. Absolutely. And, you've got a AA ball team here, a baseball team. Now we'll have arena football here. We've got a Class A art museum. We've got music. Oh my God, between music at the Galois that's available there, or music at the Symphony. I mean, all the players get a chance to perform, and many of these people have a diverse background that goes far beyond Springfield.
Oh, absolutely. We had rehearsal last night, and I was thinking, I was up in the balcony watching one of the big dance numbers, and I was thinking how cool it is that these community members who are so talented and contributing their time, and they're making this exceptional show. This morning, they went to work as lawyers and doctors and teachers and students. And, we see that. And I think it surprises a lot of people that Springfield Little Theatre is a volunteer-driven organization. So people that you're seeing on that stage are volunteers. Everybody who's working through, who's on stage, the ushers, a lot of the set building crew, a lot of the costume crew, it's all volunteer. And it's amazing to take a step back and just really look at just how large of an organization that is and how big the product ends up being. And it's all volunteer.
You're hearing my guest today on Around the Ozark Spotlight, Josh Inmon. Josh, a native of the Springfield area. Where'd you go to high school, Josh?
I went to Central.
You did? Okay. Yeah. And got involved in theater at Central? I
did, yeah. I actually, just kind of on a whim, one of my really good friends convinced me to audition for the musical my freshman year. And I was a basketball player before that. My dad was a big basketball player. So in middle school and in some of high school, I played. And then once I got into the theater, I left that and I never looked back. Been in the arts.
It's a little tough to do both, isn't it?
It is
to do
yeah.
both well. That's the problem, because you got to put a lot of time into a performance. I've had 3 daughters that have all been very involved in dance,
Mhm.
and 2 of the 3 actually wanted to do a lot of solo dance. And I'll tell you, that's putting yourself on that stage. It's just you, and if you make a mistake, it's typically pretty obvious, and,
Everybody's
a
watching
lot
you.
of pressure.
Yeah.
Now, who picks the directors when at the beginning of the season, when you're trying to figure out what does next year look like? What are the kind of shows that we're going to do, and what types of things are available to us? Who, in fact, says, okay, so and so you're going to direct this, and so you're going to direct that, or do you raise your hand and say, I want this or I want that? How does that work?
It's a little bit of both. The executive director, Beth Doman, kind of oversees that process. And the education director, Lorianne Dunn, has a big hand in that as well. But, there's a core of us. There's 4 or 5 of us who tend to direct a show every single year there. And so it's a very collaborative process. So I had lunch with Beth just a couple of weeks ago, and, we were kind of talking about what next season looks like, and maybe what I'd be interested in doing and what's available. That's another thing that people don't always understand is you can't just do any show you want. You have to see what's available, what is touring right now, because that kind of impacts what is, what we can license, what's available for us to perform. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But I would say it's very collaborative, and Beth and Lorianne are very kind, in that they put a lot of trust in us. And if we want to do something, a lot of times they'll try to make that happen for us. Which is
so as the director, do you have do you do a call out for actors and actresses to participate, and then have to, I guess, probably have the tryouts, and then is it upon you to pick who gets to be first or second chair?
It is, yeah. Usually with a show like that, there's a lot of people that have a hand in it. It's myself as the director and choreographer, and then Kim Snyder is our music director. Austin McGranahan is an assistant choreographer, and there's a lot of us at auditions who kind of decide. So it's back to collaboration and kind of seeing it's a puzzle, right? It's what piece fits to make this the best puzzle we can, the best picture overall. So it's always different. Every show is different.
So what ages are involved in the players for Elf?
Yeah, we have it's kids to adults. We probably, I'm trying to think, our youngest is, I believe, 9, and then well into adulthood.
That's very political of you, Josh. Well into adulthood. Anybody we're going to see that we've seen before?
Our buddy Andrew Wilson. Audiences will recognize him. He's grown up at the theater. He started doing stuff when he was probably elementary school. I've worked with him for 10 or 15 years now at the theater. He was in Something Rotten last year. He was one of the SpongeBobs, the title characters in that musical. He's in that. Jamie Bauer is Walter Hobbs, plays Buddy's dad. He's actually the lighting designer and the technical director, one of the technical directors at the theater. Audiences have seen him multiple times on stage. The thing that we keep going back to with Elf is it's the perfect mix of SLT veterans, so people who have done 15, 20 shows. And then we have a lot of new faces too, which I always love as a director. It's always fun to see people walk into the Landers Theater for the first time, get involved, and you can just see them that they've caught the bug, that they're there and they love everything about it. So that's really exciting.
And you're asked to not only direct, but choreograph.
Yeah. I started as a choreographer. Dance is kind of my background. Kind of what made me fall in love with the performing arts. Dance was a big part of that. And so I actually started choreographing shows first, did that for several years, and then started directing. And I actually prefer that, because I think you can tell a more seamless story when you do both. The transition from scene work into music and dance. If one person is kind of overseeing all of those aspects, I think it makes for a better product overall.
We'll be back in a moment with more on Around the Ozarks Spotlight with Josh Inmon. I'm your host, Scott Meier, back in just a minute.
Hey, everybody, it's Ethan and Sarah Forhetz from your favorite podcast, Around the Ozarks in 5. I'm sure you've been wondering, how can I get even more amazing stories, events, and witty banter to start my day?
Well, look no further. Here we are. Sign up for our daily newsletter. You'll have what's going on around the Ozarks right at your fingertips each weekday morning.
Yeah, just go to aroundtheozarks.com, click on the newsletter tab to sign up.
Thanks for listening to Around the Ozarks in 5. We hope to see you in your inbox soon.
Welcome back to the second half of today's Around the Ozarks Spotlight. I'm your host, Scott Meier. With me is Josh Inmon. Josh is the director and choreographer for the new production of Elf. That'll be at the Springfield Little Theatre beginning November 17th. How long is the run, Josh?
We run for 3 weeks. So we go November 17th through Sunday, December 3rd.
Now, as an actor yourself, you know, as well as I, the feeling of getting excited to be on stage after you've got your parts figured out. In your case, after you also know the songs you might be singing or the dances you might be doing. That 3 weeks goes pretty fast.
Oh, it does. Yeah, we cram a lot of shows into those 3 weeks. I think we have 14 public performances. But it flies by. You know, we'll open on that Friday, and then it seems literally like 2 days later it's closing, even though it's almost a month later.
And as an actor or actress, it's almost like a feeling of despair is maybe not the right word, but you kind of wish it could go longer because you put all that effort into it. It does go so fast, and then you're on to the next thing.
Yeah, it does. You know, when I was doing a lot of stuff as an actor at Springfield Little Theatre, especially in high school, I would be really down when a show closed, you know, because it's almost like a job. You know, you spend 15 or 20 hours a week with these people, and you grow these great friendships, and those are the people you see all the time. So then when it goes away after that last Sunday matinee, you know, it's kind of, what do I do now? What do I do with all that free time?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We've been watching the Netflix, we binge like everybody binges, and we've been watching the Beckham series. I don't know if you've seen that yet or not, but the soccer player. Don't know much about him. I know his wife's a what do you call it? She was a singer.
Spice Girls.
What's that group? No, girls group.
The Spice Girls.
Spice Girl. She was a Spice Girl. Thank you. You're younger than me, so thank you. Helping me on that.
That was more my thing than the soccer. I was more into Spice Girls.
But the soccer part of it, and even she talks about a little bit as the Spice Girls part of it, is very similar. You know, sport is the same way. You build a team, you get excited working with these people, they become your family, and at some point it ends. And boy, that's a tough one. At least in theater, you can go on and play even as an older person if you so desire. And in something like professional soccer, not so much.
Right.
You know. After about 32, you're about done. That's the end of that.
Definitely.
Let's talk a little bit about mentoring. You know, a big part of what you do as a director, I'm sure, is, especially if you've done it now for years, you start to see young people, or even adults, but I'm sure a lot of young people that you kind of pull along, or they look to you to pull them along. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You know, I think that is one of the most precious parts of that organization. You know, myself, I walked in that door when I was 14 to audition for a show. And that was directed by Beth Doman, who's the executive director. And, you know, here we are 21 years later. And Beth, I would say Beth is probably my number one mentor in life, in all aspects of life. She's become a dear friend. But it's really cool. And I should also say Lorianne, the education director, is there as well. Those two women have really changed the course of my life, really kind of let me forge a path into arts administration and doing what I do. So I owe a lot to both of them. But it's interesting now at my age to kind of see, you know, kids like I mentioned Andrew Wilson, who plays Buddy. You know, he was a child when he started doing stuff there. And he is, you know, now leading shows and really, I'm just so impressed with him, not only as a performer, but just how professional he is and how kind he is, and really leading by example. So it's really cool to kind of see the next generation come up and do their thing. It's exciting.
Do you see an aspiration from some of these folks of going on and doing more, or are they satisfied with doing community theater?
It kind of depends. We have a student, Erin Bohannon, who is currently out on the road in the Broadway National Tour of Six. She's one of our SLT kids, and she's at the top of the industry. She's doing what she loves. So you'll see that, but then you'll also see students who they love theater and they're really talented, but they have other interests. We have some of our troopers who just graduated, and they are going off to study nursing and engineering and education. And, that's not to say that they're not always going to go back and perform. But I think the cool thing about theater in general, and Springfield Little Theater really exemplifies this, it gives you the tools and the foundation to be the kind of person who can follow your dreams and do what you want. And if that's theater and that's the arts, that's wonderful. But if that's not that, you still take all of these tools that you gain as a student there or as a performer there, and you take them into the real world, into what you want to do.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the music for Elf is live?
It is. Yeah, we have an orchestra of, I believe it's 12 musicians. So it's a large orchestra down there. And we have 45, I believe, cast members. So it's when you go to the show, there's about 75 people working in the orchestra pit, on stage, behind the scenes. Sure. There's a lot of people making it happen.
Is that a little like herding cats, or is it a little easier than that?
It's, it depends on the day. There's times where it's really smooth and you wonder, how did we get here? But then there's times where, it's a little more challenging, but again, it's those good times and bad times that make you step back and realize, look at all this effort that we put into the show, and look at the payoff.
Now, during the pandemic, some of the programs actually didn't have understudies because you were working with so few people, and sometimes didn't have that depth. Do you have the depth with Elf?
We do. We have. I want to be careful saying that we're back to normal, because I don't know that we'll ever be back to normal post-pandemic. But this is a large show for sure. We have a full cast. We have some understudies for the principal roles, and we're pretty self-sustaining. We're making it happen.
Sure. And I see that I was looking at the press release that was sent out earlier this week. There's a few shows that are coming back. One in particular that I saw on Broadway, The Play That Goes Wrong. Then I saw it at Springfield Little Theater last year. Right? Was it last year?
Yeah.
And I told Beth, actually, the production here in Springfield was better than what we saw on Broadway.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I saw that. I had never seen it live until SLT did it, but I thought it was exceptional. I thought it was so good.
So when you do that, is it because it was a successful run when it was here before, or is it because of the licensing process?
It's that one's because it was so successful. That was kind of a surprise to everyone, because a straight play, so something without music, typically in a commercial setting doesn't sell as many tickets. That's just how it is. People want to see musicals usually over plays. But that sold out, and it was a huge success for SLT. And so it just made sense for them to bring it back, because they had to turn people away. There weren't enough seats for all the people who wanted to see it last time. So they're bringing it back.
Well, it was very funny. The difference, we were talking about it. My wife and I were talking about it after we saw the performance. And, the one in New York was so staged, if you will, that even the parts that were supposed to be funny, it's like when you go to a comedian who everybody tells you, this guy's going to knock you dead. He's just great. You go there and you go, meh, not so much. I felt like the actors were having as much fun on stage as the audience was here. And I got to believe word of mouth had a lot to do with the success of that show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's one that, just hearing that title, most people don't know what that is. But then, your friend or your neighbor goes to see that and says, you have to see this show. There's nothing that sells a show better than word of mouth.
And it's dangerous. There's a little danger in that play, because the things that can go wrong.
Yes. And, almost anything you can imagine goes wrong during that, for sure.
Yeah. I thought that the actors in that show, that that took a lot of courage. There's parts where parts fall down around you, and it could just as easily fall down on you.
Yes.
Now, in Elf, you talked about choreographing a lot of it. Is there a lot of dance in Elf? Is it just a mixture of dance and music?
It's
What can we look forward to?
Yeah, it's a big family musical. So there's several big production numbers that have the whole cast. That we have 50 people on stage and lots of moving parts. So it's a spectacle for sure, I would say.
Oh boy! Well, it's exciting. It's almost here, and we are getting close to the Christmas season. What's next for you? I mean, Elf will be on, and it'll be done 3 weeks later, and you're still here, and you've got to be looking forward to your next great event.
Yeah, I'm actually going to take a break after this. I'm the assistant director at Juanita K. Hammonds Hall, where I am today, and we have a really busy season coming up. So I'll be sad that Elf is over, but also kind of relieved, ready for a nice little break and focusing on the shows we have coming up here.
Now, the musician side of it, you said there's 12 musicians that'll be playing the live music for the program. Who makes that selection? Is that still part of your job, or is that do you lean to the symphony for that, or how do you figure out who plays for the show?
We have a great music team. Our music director Kim Snyder kind of oversees that process, and we also have a music coordinator, Carla Wooten, who kind of helps with hiring those musicians. And the cool thing about that, they're kind of their own little world. So we have our onstage community that we're building the show, but those musicians, a lot of the people who you'll see down there in the orchestra pit have been doing this for years and years. So, there's some regulars down there that almost any musical SLT has, it's going to be a lot of the same musicians. And you can hear that, you can feel that synergy, that they've played together a lot, and they're really good at what they do. We're really lucky.
Do the actors cover for the musicians, or the musicians cover for the actors if things kind of get out of sync? How does that work?
It depends. The cool thing about theater is there's never been a play or a musical that anyone has ever seen that everything is perfect, right? There's going to be a little mistake every single time. And the goal is, the best you can hope for is that no one notices. And 99% of the time, no one is going to notice. It's the first time seeing the show. So, the musicians and the actors are so talented that usually they just go right by it and nobody ever knows. Sometimes even I don't notice.
As a director, Josh, where do you stand during the production? Are you behind the stage, or are you back up in the audience?
Usually what I like to do is I like to sit on the staircase back there at the back of the landers. And a lot of times, honestly, I have my laptop and I'm kind of doing some other work, maybe for the hall. And I don't really like to be heavily involved once the show is going. I'll do warm-ups and I'll be there. But I like to turn that over to the actors and let them have some fun. I always say we create this box that, we establish the boundaries of where the show's going to go and what we can do to make it a really tight and nice production. But then within that, you let the actors play and have fun.
Now, is there, going back to the relationship between theater and sports, is there, or are there captains in the production? Are there people on stage that maybe kind of carry it forward, so it allows you the chance to step back and say, you know what, we've worked to this point and it's in their hands now?
Yeah, we have a dance captain, Aravis Leininger. You'll see her as one of the featured dancers, and audiences will recognize her. She's been in dozens of SLT shows, but she's a dance captain. So between Aravis and then our assistant choreographer, Austin McGranahan, they kind of, I always say they make sure that the integrity of the dance numbers stay the same, so that what you see on opening night is just as good, if not better, and cleaner than what it's been. Yeah.
Excellent.
So the audiences are seeing the same show every night.
We've got about a minute left. Let's tell the people again how they can get tickets.
Yeah, so Elf the Musical is coming to Springfield Little Theatre November 17th through December 3rd. You can get tickets at springfieldlittletheatre.org, or you can call 417-869-1334.
And I'm assuming costumes are over the top, as they typically are.
They are, yeah. Lots of elf costumes. Lots of fun stuff. And
everybody will be totally satisfied that Farrell is not here, and that our why can't I remember his name the right
Yeah,
way?
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell. Yeah, I was William Ferrell. Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell.
Is,
He's not there, but I will say Andrew has done such a good job. And, you know, it's all the stuff you love about the movie, and it's the essence of that. But he's doing his own take on it, and it's fantastic.
Well, Josh, I'll use this moment to tell you break a leg and hopefully have a great time. I want to thank my guest today, Josh Inmon, on Around the Ozark Spotlight. Also, my producers, Taylor Worley and Jay Stevens, as well as all of you for joining us. If you happen to miss all or part of today's program, you can find it in its entirety on the MidwestFamilySpringfield.com website, the AroundTheOzarks.com site, or our new app for ATO, which can be found in Apple apps or Android apps, where you can also hear and view today's show, as well as all the earlier shows this year and last. I'm Scott Meier, your host. And remember, every day is a gift. Have a great day.